first order of business once things settle down would be for the interim government to use government funds to repair those temples and also provide some kind of compensation to Hindu families whose houses have been burnt. And there should be no debate about it. Welcome. Welcome to Khanversations. I'm Muqtedar Khan, your host, and today I'm going to talk to you about a very serious development in Bangladesh. The violence in Bangladesh, in a country which is more or less lawless at the moment, it is definitely without a government. After Sheikh Hasina's resignation and escape to India or departure to India, the country is experiencing utter violence all over. There is no law and order. And one of the aspects of this violence appears to be an attack on Hindus, a minority. Bangladesh is about 170 million people, and nearly 10% of the population is Hindu. Their temples have been attacked. A very prominent Hindu musician whose house was like a cultural icon in Bangladesh has sadly been burnt down. So this vandalism is also targeting Hindu minorities. And it is quite possible that while the students are acknowledging the fact that this is happening, there are elements who are now taking advantage of the chaos to essentially polarize the society along religious lines and also basically take revenge. Because for a long time, the Hindu community in Bangladesh has been seen as supporter of Sheikh Hasina. Anyway, we will talk about that, what its implications are, also in context with the Indian government's reaction and policies towards this, because it is very difficult to separate the two, and you will understand why. And if Indian government does provide support to Sheikh Hasina and gives her asylum, then you will see a lot of the anger against India may continue to be directed towards the Hindu community in India, primarily because the Hindutva government of India, BJP, and its Hindu nationalism are giving it a very religious and communal overtones to what is really going on in Bangladesh. But before we dive into this issue, please subscribe to Khanversations, like this video, press the bell icon, and don't forget to share this video with your socio-political network. So basically, as soon as Sheikh Hasina left and the army took over, one of the things that has happened in Bangladesh is the police force, which for the last 6-7 weeks had been trying to suppress the student uprising and student protests in a very brutal fashion. And we saw how thugs associated with Sheikh Hasina as well as with the police have dealt with violence to the point that over 300 people had been killed, mostly students, by the police and the Awami League thugs who were protected by the party and were working in concert with the police of Bangladesh. So now it appears that the police is now totally paranoid and afraid that they will be targeted and there will be revenge against the police forces. Interestingly, in United Kingdom, where the right-wing thugs are targeting the police. So perhaps the police is looking and saying, oh my God, now they're going to come after us. So the police has disappeared. So the cities in Bangladesh are not being protected. So nobody is being protected by the police, not only the majority community, which is also being targeted because they are part of the Awami League, and the minority community also. So there are no police forces, law enforcement to go out there and protect the minorities. I think this is something that the Army General, Zaman should have anticipated. Somebody in his military should have anticipated, and they should have immediately sent some forces out to at least protect the religious places of the Hindu minorities. It is very important. Minorities are helpless in such situations. According to reports coming out, several temples have been destroyed, and as I said, a very prominent Hindu musician's house, which was like a museum to culture and to musicology, has also been burnt down and destroyed. Luckily, the the family has survived. So far, according to the reports that are available in open sources and media and social media, two Hindu councillors or elected officials who are members of the Awami League have been killed, and several Hindu houses have also been burnt and looted, and as has an ISKCON temple and the deities in the temple. So several temples have been vandalized, but there have been positive overtures also. There are clear indications where students have been calling out through mosques not to hurt Hindu minorities. There are imams who have gone and tried to protect a mosque. So there is a very iconic picture of Muslims guarding a Hindu temple in Bangladesh in the past couple of days. So both things are happening. And for those of you who are discussing and reporting this, especially on social media, inciting hatred, especially from the Indian commentators on this X, if you're going to just just make it up as if there's a genocide of Hindus going on, etc. Overall, total 500 people have been killed, mostly students from the beginning of the protest until now. So there is no massive genocide of Hindus taking place. Yes, there is violence, unacceptable violence taking place, and that should not have happened and should not happen. And well, I don't even know if there's ever going to be any accountability, because what is essentially happening is that for the last 10 to 14 years, Sheikh Hasina has ruled in a very authoritarian manner, and she has suppressed a lot of political forces, the Bangladesh Nationalist Party as well as the Jamaat-e-Islami. And now they are seeing this as an opportunity to take revenge against the Awami League and Sheikh Hasina's partners and allies, and the Hindu community is perceived as a partner of Sheikh Hasina. And some of them, they are targeting a lot of members of the Awami League party, and several of them have been killed. And some of them are also Hindu. So it is better to look at this as a political violence rather than to give it a communal color, because if you give it a communal color, then it is going to merely exacerbate rather than calm down. I suppose it is in the interest of everybody to ensure that violence comes to an end immediately. That should be the first task of the interim government. Now, Muhammad Yunus, who's just, I guess, left France and gone back to Bangladesh to become in charge of the interim government. I hope that his first job is to just calm down everything, end the violence first, and then begin the negotiations for a dialogue for the interim government and what its nature will be, and then what will happen. The third step will be to plan for a fair and free election as soon as possible. The police, unfortunately, is seen as a tool of Sheikh Hasina, and their brutality during the suppression is something that needs to be taken account of. And right now, the reason why there is no law and order is because the police is not doing its job and letting the mobs go berserk, and the mobs are basically trying to target Awami League and the police also. But so far, there are no cases that I can point to where systematic violence against law enforcement has taken place. The problem with this is that there is a history of violence against Hindus. So, for example, in 1992, when the Babri Masjid was destroyed by Hindu nationalists and Hindu thugs who climbed up on the mountain, on the mosque, and destroyed it completely in 1992, there were reactions in Bangladesh to this, and literally hundreds of Hindu temples were destroyed in Bangladesh as revenge for the destruction of the Babri Masjid in Ayodhya in 1992. So in modern history, I think that was perhaps the first time when systematic violence against Hindu religious places happened in Bangladesh, and it was triggered by the destruction of the Ayodhya. So the point that I'm trying to make here is not justification. There is no justification for destruction of religious places of worship, and there is no justification for simply targeting innocent minority people. But the point that I'm trying to make is there is a connection to what happens in India to what happens in Bangladesh. And therefore, one way to control what happens in Bangladesh is to control what happens in India. So, for example, the second time the violence happened against Hindu temples and destruction was in 2021. And the 2021 violence was triggered largely by Prime Minister Modi's visit to Bangladesh, where he insisted on visiting Hindu temples and performing Hindu worship so that people in India obviously think he's whatever, Hindu Hriday Samrat and etc. etc. So to convince his people at home that, look, I'm promoting Hinduism abroad. When he did that, there was a backlash in Bangladesh, and many temples were destroyed in 2021 too. And that is something that we have to keep in mind. When Muslim leaders, for example, Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia came to India, the Sheikh of United Arab Emirates came to India, Sisi came to India, they don't go to mosques and create and have all these videos of them worshiping and praying. No, they don't do these kind of things. But Modi does, whether he goes to UAE or whether he goes to Bali or anything, he has to bring his Hindu nationalism with there. And there are people, at least some, who do get offended by that. And so in 1992, there was violence against Hindus, and again in 2021, and now again you see the violence. The violence this time, it is bad, it is horrible, it is going to generate a lot of refugees if it is not controlled. But the violence this time is more like violence as a reaction to the Awami League, because they have seen or they perceive the Hindu community. A bit of an advice for all minority communities, even for American Muslims: don't put all your eggs in the same basket. If you're all with Democrats and if the Republicans come to power, you get into trouble. So it is important for minorities to be engaged in politics, but engaged with all segments of the political spectrum. So if all Hindus were just supporters of Awami League, then they are going to have a difficult time. But that is not an excuse or a justification for the violence. That needs to be condemned by everybody. And hopefully at some point there will be an accountability of those who have targeted, who have taken this as an opportunity to target and kill Hindus and destroy their places of worship. In fact, the first order of business once things settle down would be for the interim government to use government funds to repair those temples and also provide some kind of compensation to Hindu families whose houses have been burnt. And there should be no debate about it. They should just take the time out and do that and assure and one more thing that perhaps Muhammad Yunus could do is to go out there and meet with the Hindu community members, leaders, or make a visit. Don't be like Modi, who hasn't gone to Manipur till now. Do not do that. Do not signal to the community that we don't care about you. You can kill yourself, burn yourself to death. I'm not interested. I'm more interested in going to Rome and take selfies with the Prime Minister of Italy, but I will not go to Manipur. They should not adopt that attitude. I hope a very prominent leader, if possible, Muhammad Yunus himself, visits with the Hindu community and assures them. If that's not happening, if people are listening, if you are a leader in your community, in your mohalla, in your city, do what I'm asking you. Simple. Go out there and meet with your neighbors and Hindu neighbors and friends and communicate with them. I know Bangladeshi Muslims who are married to Hindus. There are interfaith couples out there, and they should at least use their connections in the majority community to provide protection for the minority community. A test of any democracy is very simple: how well it treats its minorities. That is one of the biggest tests of any democracy. On the policy level, I said this in several shows on Satya Hindi and other places where I was talking about this, and perhaps on my show too. Yet one of the things that the Indian Army will be worried about is influx of refugees from Bangladesh into India as a result of the instability in Bangladesh. The instability in Bangladesh is going to drive thousands of people across the border, both Muslim and Hindus. And one of the things that is going to happen if the violence against Hindus increases, a lot of Hindus will want to come across the border into India. According to reports now already, there has been an attempt by 500 to 600 Bangladeshis to cross into the border, and the Indian Army has stopped them. So India is controlling the borders and has prevented them from crossing over. Now, this raises an interesting question for people in India as to what the CAA, the law that was passed in 2019, and there was so much protest about it, about giving protection to only non-Muslim communities who are experiencing human rights violations. So will all these citizens of Bangladesh who are Hindu, who will migrate, who, if they migrate to India as refugees because of the current violence in Bangladesh, will they be granted citizenship according to the CAA? The answer is really no, because the CAA has a sunset law. I think anybody who came in recent terms will not get citizenship. It's only for people who came in the 70s, but not now. So this role of this use of religion by Prime Minister Modi whenever he goes to these countries has triggered a kind of anger and association. So when people are angry with India, they are now targeting Hindus because Modi goes and triggers these connections in those countries. So the question really for the Indian government is, what will it do? India cannot afford to intervene, because India talks a lot about not interfering in other people's internal affairs. So this is Bangladesh's internal affairs. If violence continues, will India intervene? Will India reach out to the new caretaker government and ask them to do something? Because similar violence happens in India too. On Eid, as soon as the elections were over, there were so many Muslims who were lynched in India. Would India be happy to deal with Muslim countries asking India what is happening in India? Why are Muslims being killed? Obviously not. The answer, standard answer is, this is our internal matter. So will India now that the shoe is on the other foot, will India take a strong position? There are lots of demands. Clearly, the ISKCON group are demanding that the Indian government intervene and do something about protecting minorities in the thing. There are international institutions like the United Nations and their branches and civil society, international civil society institutions, which worry about minorities, religious minorities in other countries. But India has delegitimized all of these, whether it is Amnesty International or human rights groups, any of these. India has completely discredited them because they have written reports about India's own problems with minorities. So now even using international civil society institutions will become very difficult. There are a couple of things that India can do. And one of the things would be not to appear as if it is trying to restore the Awami League's control over Bangladesh, and certainly not give permanent or some kind of asylum to Sheikh Hasina. The best solution, and even the Europeans don't want her, even though one of her nieces is, I think, a minister or a high-ranking elected official in Britain. Britain is clearly not going to give her political asylum. So she should go to Dubai and just live there. That's probably the best solution, without actually seeking political asylum. Just go there and stay there till something happens. But if India does provide her protection, then there will be more and more anger in Bangladesh. So yes, I think the situation with regards to Hindus in Bangladesh is deplorable and deserves to be condemned by everybody. I too condemn it very strongly. And I hope that one of the first things that Muhammad Yunus will do as soon as he takes over as the head of the interim government would be to assure the minorities that they are safe, and provide security to them and to their places of worship. I hope that you found this conversation interesting and thought-provoking. We will continue to keep an eye on Bangladesh. This crisis will not go away that easily or that quickly, so we will have lots of conversations about Bangladesh. So keep an eye, and therefore ring the bell icon after you subscribe to the channel so that you get notified about new videos that I post. So until next time, I'm your host, Muqtedar Khan. Take care.